welcome back to Operation Evil. I am your host, Nyoka, and I am joined today by Heather. Heather has become quite a regular co-host, and I appreciate her so much. And we're recording a December episode, and I cannot believe it that we're already recording December episodes.
Better be here before we know it.
I know, I'm not ready, but, doesn't matter. But Heather is taking charge of this one as well. And it's one of the top, like, Christmas time true crime cases. So I think this would be really good, and it hasn't been covered by us anyway. So take it away whenever you're ready, Heather.
All right, so this episode will be about the Sodder family from Fayetteville, West Virginia. Their house burns down on Christmas Eve, but there's a big mystery behind this. So on Christmas Eve, and this is 1945, so back in time a little bit, there were 10 total children, but only 9 of them were home at the time. The eldest had been away at the military, or with the military, and had returned home, but he was staying at someone else's home.
I'm sorry, 10 children?
Yes, ma'am, 10.
Woo!
Right? And so he was old enough to be in the military, and I think the youngest was 5 at the time. So that's the age range.
Wow.
So it was the evening. They had had their Christmas Eve, and George, who is the father, and his 2 oldest sons, John and George Jr., they went to bed early, while the younger children were allowed to stay up and play with their new Christmas gifts, and the mom stayed up as well. And around 10:30, the mother, Jennie Sodder, took the youngest child, Sylvia, and she took her upstairs to bed. And then a few hours goes by, and it's a little after 1 a.m., and Jennie awoke to the smell of smoke. She went downstairs, and she found flames were spreading quickly through the home and her husband's office and around that area, and it was beginning to cut off the access to the telephone. So she acted quickly. She sent her 17-year-old daughter, Marion, outside with the youngest, Sylvia, while her and her husband, George, tried to desperately save the other children who were asleep upstairs. So John and George Jr., the 2 oldest boys at home, shouted and were trying to wake up the sibling upstairs, but within moments, the staircase leading up there was engulfed in flames. Yes. So George, the dad, rushes outside, determined to get to these children in some way, shape, or form. But every attempt he tried to make failed under very strange circumstances. So there's usually this ladder that they kept by the house, that it was propped up against the house. It was not there. Both of their family vehicles, the trucks, which they were going to try to stand in the back of and get to the next level of the house, would not start, which they had ran perfectly the day before they had mentioned. And even this water barrel that they kept at their home, now remember, it's 1945. They
Right.
have a water barrel. And he hoped to use the water in the water barrel to put the fire out. But of course, it's December and it's frozen solid. But they said the day before it had not been frozen. So these are kind of some of the things that are just like giving them hiccups.
Everything is against them.
Everything is against them. So Marion, one of the daughters, she ran to the neighbor's house to call the Fayetteville Fire Department, but the operator never picked up. So again, 1945, 1 a.m., the operator doesn't pick up. So another resident who saw the fire from a nearby tavern tried calling them too, and the operator never picked up.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And all I can think of is like Andy Griffiths. Sarah, can you know, when like
Yes.
fashions like plug it in type of operator. So they're not having any luck. So eventually one of the family friends or somebody is in there around there drives into town to actually go to the fire chief's home. So this is Fire Chief F.J. Morris. And they finally get him awakened and they tell him what's happening. And he has to do the old-fashioned phone tree system. So to get his fire department dispatched. So he calls one person, they call somebody, they call 2 friends and all that kind of stuff.
Oh
So,
my gosh. This is what people dealt with back then?
yes, can you imagine?
Oh, what a nightmare.
I guess that's why they were called basement savers, right?
Right.
So by the time the fire department arrived, it's 8 a.m.
Uh,
The fire started around 1 a.m.
wow.
By the time the fire department assembled and gets to the home is completely burned to the ground. The family said they estimated, and people around said it was about 45 minutes from the time they were getting everybody out until the house was completely leveled. So the fire department gets there. Of course, there's just the basement and all the smoldering remains of the house. So there's lots of unanswered questions, yes, about this case and strange clues and the things that kept happening and what was going on. So, of course, the house is burned up. The children never made it out. They didn't go get the children. They assumed the children never made it out.
How
So,
many did make it out?
so far, just four.
Oh,
But the oldest son who wasn't there, John and George Jr., Sylvia and Marion. Oh, I'm sorry, five. And then five were still left inside. That's 10. Yes, 10 children.
mm.
So at first, George and Jennie believed that their five children had perished in this fire. But as the day went on and the ashes were cooling and things were being rummaged through, no bones or any kind of remains or any jewelry or anything was found. The chief suggested that the intense heat may have cremated their bodies, while investigators blamed faulty wiring for starting the fire. Yet several details were not adding up, and it's more than several. We're just numerous details, we should say. The witnesses and the family recall that the lights were still glowing inside the house as part of, most of it was a fire was going and it was spreading, even though it was thought to have been electrical. And if that was the case, they would have said that all the lights would have been out. So Jennie, the mother, again, who had turned off the lights before she went to bed, she recalled that she's like, I turned the lights off before I went to bed. But then she starts thinking about the other strange events that happened before this fire started. And she recalls hearing a thud on the roof. And she said it sounded like a ball, like a big bowling ball or something, had hit the roof and rolled off and hit the ground. And she said she had got up to go investigate it, but she didn't find anything outside or see anything strange at that time. So, and that was about a half an hour before the fire started. So then some other things they started to remember and recall about things that had happened prior to the fire. So George remembered that there was a man that came by weeks earlier and was asking about work. George owned a trucking company, and he was asking about work. And when George didn't have any work, he pointed to fuse boxes on the outside of the house and said, that's going to cause a fire someday,
Ooh.
right? And then there was this other man who came by the house selling life insurance. Back in the day, people went door to door to sell things. And he also allegedly threatened George, saying that this house is going to go up in smoke and the children are going to be destroyed. And he says that this guy was threatening him because of things that George had said about Mussolini, who is an Italian dictator. So we'll get to some of that again here in a few minutes. So shortly before Christmas, the family also noticed a stranger who was parked along the side of the road, and he seemed to be watching the children as they were coming home from school. There was a telephone repairman that came by after the fire, and he confirmed that the phone lines had been cut and not burned in the fire, a sign of someone may have sabotaged their means to call for help. Despite evidence of the missing children, so like I said, the house burned up. They looked through the stuff. They couldn't find any bones. They couldn't find any jewelry. They couldn't find anything. Zero, nothing. Evidence of bodies. But 5 days later, 5 death certificates were issued for these children, listing the cause of death as fire or suffocation. So even without out a body, without a trace of anything, 5 days later,
That was fast.
that was it for that. Yeah, I think it was fast because 1945, it was all still paper and pen. It was not
That's
like
true.
we couldn't print them out. It was all still, yeah. So then a few days after the fire, George used a bulldozer to fill in the basement of the house with dirt. creating this makeshift memorial. And and when he did that, he may have destroyed any remaining evidence. Of course, they probably also in 1945 didn't tell them not to do so, didn't have crime scene tape up. So Chief Morris, remember him? We had to go get him in town. And
Yes.
he claimed to have found a heart on,
What?
yeah, a heart. He claimed to have found this heart on the side of the home. He claimed it was buried in a box. And when the family took this box to have it examined, it turned out to only be a liver from a cow.
This is weird.
Yes, and it was also untouched by any flames. Like the box, the container it was in, had not been charred, had not been burned, didn't have any smoke or smolders marks or anything like that on it. So then this chief, good old Fayetteville, West Virginia for you, I guess. Chief Morris later admitted that he had planted it. He was trying to give the family comfort.
Oh no.
But my question is like, how is a heart in a box? Besides it's a song, right?
It doesn't even make sense.
Like, how would that give you comfort to find? That would make me even more angry that someone cut my child's heart out and put it in a box and left it at the
Yeah.
right? I don't know. Yes, it's just everything is just like so strange. And so, yeah. In 1949, so fast forwarding a few years here, the father, George, decided he wanted to dig up the home and the excavation and have an excavation of the house and where he had dumped all the dirt. So this time, the investigators did find several human vertebrae, and these vertebrae ended up being sent to the Smithsonian. And experts at the Smithsonian said that these bones did belong to a young adult male, somewhere between the ages of 16 and 22. It possibly could be one of the Sodder boys, but the lack of charring on the bones, like I said, if those were truly bones, they would have more evidence of being burnt in the fire. And this age, somewhere between 16 and 22, they did not have a boy that age at that time. So that evidence did not line up either. So, of course, these results became inconclusive. The family obviously isn't giving up. They don't give up, especially the mom. And they hire private investigators to follow some leads across the country because some witnesses have claimed that they had seen these missing children. So by this time, back up just a second. So by this time, they have erected this billboard, which I have given you pictures to put in the show notes. This billboard of pictures of the children with a reward that if you've seen anything or know anything, identifying them to call the authorities.
So they think their kids could be alive?
Yes. Yes. So some witnesses have claimed to see these children. And each instance that someone has called in and said that they saw the children, they claim to have seen them in, quote unquote, the company of Italian speaking adults. So that was that kind of. So remember that he did have a threat against him from the life insurance guy about Mussolini. Okay. So we're starting to put the little pieces of the puzzle together here. All right. So a hotel owner from Charleston said that a group matching the description of the children had stayed for several days after the date of the fire. So after Christmas, they had stayed there for several days, along with Italian-speaking adults. So, So there's some conflicting dates, but somewhere in the range from 1967 to 1968.
This is many years later.
Yeah, many years later. The mom, Jennie, receives this anonymous letter, and it's postmarked from Central City, Kentucky. And it says inside, there's a handwritten note, and it's a picture. And on this back of this picture, it says, Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie. Little boys. And then it says A90123 or 35. That wasn't really clear. So this was a picture they thought to be the missing son, Louis. And the number was believed to be some kind of code. So this family sent a detective to Central City, Kentucky to investigate. But this detective disappeared and was never heard from again.
This is the craziest case ever.
I know, right? I like read some of these and I'm like, oh my goodness, this has to be told. All right, so this guy, he disappears. So this picture is still inconclusive because, again, in the 1950s and 60s, they didn't have age progression pictures, right? We can't do it to see what your son may or may not look like as an adult. So they're not sure if this picture is their son, if it's not their son, if it's a hoax, what's going on. So then this really lit like a fire under Jennie, and she becomes completely convinced that her children are all still alive. And so this is when they, keep taking care of this billboard on Route 16 in Fayetteville. And it displays their photos, offers a reward, and it was there for decades as a haunting reminder that the family search was never, there's no answers for this search.
Those poor parents. This
Right?
is torture.
Yeah, five children.
Right.
Not one, not two, not three, right? And like I said, I told you before we started recording, I have a friend who lives in this area, and she says she remembers seeing this billboard growing up,
Wow.
and that it was something that was talked about for a long time. And she's also the lady whose niece is missing in that area that I was telling you about.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a whole nother ball of wax.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the father, George, he passes away in 1969, and Jennie passed away in 1989, and they never learned what happened to their missing children.
Oh, that's awful.
So to this day, there's many theories that persist. There's this theory about the mafia, that they kidnapped the kids, and it's tied to George's Italian background. We'll get to some of that in a minute. Some of this might get repetitive. And to his retaliation for some of the things he had said about Mussolini, and it might be this elaborate cover up. But the truth behind the Sodder case and the fire remains one of the most chilling and unsolved mysteries in America. Not just in West Virginia, but in America.
I mean, why would they care so much what one man said about another?
Right,
A man with 10 kids in
right.
West Virginia. Like, I don't get it.
No, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's identify these children. There's five of them. There was Maurice, who was 14, Martha, who was 12, Lewis, who was 10, Jennie, who was 8, and Betty, who was 5. These are the ones that are missing, and they were never found. So a quick recap of the timeline of that evening. At 12:30 a.m., Jennie remembered getting a phone call from a wrong number. Somebody's like, oh, wrong number. And she later describes the voice as weird, and the voice had a weird laugh. Right. And then shortly after this is when she hears the thud on the roof, and she gets up to investigate. And a half an hour after that, between 1 and 1:30, they both awake to the smell of smoke. It's filling the downstairs by the office, the telephone. They wake up the children and try to get to the other children. And, like we had talked about, all the bizarre happenings, that everything they were trying to do to get to the children was just a hiccup after hiccup. The ladder was missing. The water barrel was froze. The trucks didn't start.
No
All
one
that.
answered the phone.
Right. Their phone wasn't working. The chief wasn't answering his phone. There's the phone trouble. There's the ladder. Yeah. And then there was still no bodies. And then what the remains they did find is inconclusive. They don't know that if, again, no DNA testing to see if it was children. And then they had this weird photograph that just shows up out of the blue 20 years later. So official investigations from the local fire chief and the state investigators declared that the fire was accidental / electrical and said that the children died in it. And then, like we discussed, the death certificates were issued almost right away. We said that the bones were found. The FBI was involved. They investigated as a possible interstate kidnapping, because I think there was like a case going on at that time where there was some kidnappings going on, but closed the case after 2 years because they didn't have any good leads. And state investigators finally just called the case hopeless.
No.
That's what they said. So the official conclusion was that the children died in the fire, but the family's belief is that it was arson and kidnapping, and that the fire was set deliberately to distract them so that they could get the children out alive. There's the mafia theory. So this is where George's history comes into play. So there's this theory that it's the Sicilian mafia who have taken the children. George was an immigrant. He had publicly made these claims against Mussolini. He was well known for being very outspoken in the city and the town where they lived. He wasn't afraid to come out and say that they were fascist and communists, and he was just on and on and on and on and on to anybody who would listen. Some of the sources later say that he may have been tied to crime groups, organized crime, but there was never any solid evidence of finding that he was tied to any mafia, and that was still debated. And then there was the theory that the photograph is a hoax and that it was just something done by a teenager as a cruel prank. So the bottom line is, though, that none of these theories have produced any proof or come up with anything to get this case solved. Throughout the years, though, the family had continued to receive tips, reported sightings, and again, nothing came of any of those. But Sylvia, the youngest child at the time, she passed away in 2021. But she never gave up. She has actually wrote a book about her family and everything that had happened. There's actually quite a few books on this story. And, she can give her firsthand account. And one of the things in one of her books that's not talked about a lot in the police reports or the fire reports is that they all recall, who are old enough. And she I don't know that she was old enough to remember this at the time, but she was probably told, by her family over and over, since this was a significant thing that happened in their lives. I'm sure they talked about it quite often. But there were a set of footprints or foot tracks, whatever you want to call it, in the snow that night that didn't match up to anybody in the family or anybody else that was there. And they kind of went off a weird way, not like where everybody else had been gathering to watch the fire, look at the scene and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was something that she talks about in one of her books. And then they also say, somebody says they saw a man at the scene who didn't really look to be fit in. One man said that he thought he saw him stealing a block and tackle, which is, can we call them cherry pickers now, like to get engines out of cars, to work on cars, the footprints in the snow. And none of this was documented in the police reports. If it was just kind of, very minimal about it. So, and then there's no official police report that confirmed the footprints or the strange man standing there. But the family does believe that there's someone there before and during the fire. Sylvia dedicated most of her life to try to uncover the mystery and truth about her missing siblings, but rightfully so. She believed that they were still alive, and after her parents died, she still continued to keep the story alive. She was 79 when she passed away, and she too died without any answers to the great mystery that allures the locals today.
I'm devastated that I don't know what happened.
Right.
I can't imagine that family.
Yeah. Right. So George's background, he was born in I'm going to mess this all up. Giorgio Soddu, Soddu, I guess, in Tula, Sardinia, Italy in 1895. When he came to the United States as a young man around the age 13, he arrived on Ellis Island, which most people did at that time. Nothing about this is strange. And he settled in West Virginia. When he settled in West Virginia, he changed his name to George Sodder and became a successful businessman owning a trunk company. He hauled coal and other goods in and out of West Virginia. He was well respected in his community, but also known to be outspoken, as I said, and particularly about his hatred for Italian fascists and dictators, aka Mussolini. Right? All right. So again, there's no connected proof that he was connected to organized crime. But that is like one of the big theories, is that he made somebody mad, and this was the way to get back at him. And if you watch any of those movies, you'll never find out unless somebody talks and you're not talking, because we all want our fingers, right?
Right.
Right. So, yeah. So then there was still, like I said, and then the thing that those were what really made people on this mafia theory is that every time somebody said they saw the children, it was with Italian speaking adults.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of The Godfather.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So the Sodder family, especially George and Jennie, strongly believed that their children were kidnapped and not killed by the fire. They never accused anyone directly of any involvement, especially in the mafia, but possibly was openly discussed among them in interviews. And leads went cold, witnesses' sightings quit surfacing, and authorities declared to reopen the case later on, but nothing ever came of it. And George hired other investigators, and they explored the possibility of international connections, including Italy, but again, nothing ever came about.
Man, this is depressing.
No, right?
I just want to know what happened. Like, I
I
would
know.
love to know the mom's take on what she felt like happened.
They all like, and Jenny, I was reading a couple, like I didn't buy any of the books, but you could read a few passages in the thing, and it was how their family was dead set on that it was the fire was started to distract them. They got the children out of the house. The children were abducted and taken away. And they think that they were taken to Italy to live new lives in Italy.
Hmm. Wouldn't they try to come back at some point though? I don't know.
Thinking it's still the 60s and 70s. And if you're, I don't know.
I don't know.
Like, I watch too many mafia movies, I guess. I'm like,
Yeah,
if I'm going to get kidnapped by the mafia, I'm like, am I going to talk? Am I going to try to get away?
that's true. I
You
didn't think of it that way.
like, am I going to, because if you go back, something's going to happen to your parents, that kind of thing. I mean,
Mm.
there's always the ifs, ands, or buts, but I mean, they have that way of just being like, you don't mess with them. You don't want to mess up.
No. I
Um,
wonder if like anyone that reopened the case went back to where the house originally was and tried to go through the
I
dirt in the basement and
I couldn't find anything on that except for that last one that was like in the 60s, when they had it redone and they found the bones.
yeah.
And
I
then never,
mean, everything was just so different then.
yeah, it was totally.
And it's like, I mean, did the mom just want to believe that they were abducted and lived this different life because they had a life and they weren't? You know,
I have no
I
idea.
don't know. I don't
Right.
know. I mean, can a body burn to the point where they can't find remains in a fire after it's burning for hours upon hours? I mean, I don't know any of the science, but
It only burned for 45 minutes.
oh, okay. It took that long for them just to come.
Yes, it took like 7 hours for the fire department to assemble and show up.
I see. I see.
Pretty much, AKA Water Brigade.
Yeah, yeah. Um, hmm.
Yeah, so 45 minutes from the time that they were getting everyone out of the house until the time that it ended up collapsing as it burned, but then it was completely gone in 45 minutes.
Wow, that's fast.
Mm-hmm.
What a shame.
There was probably an accelerant. They cut the phone lines. Listen to me being all speculative.
I know, right? Like there's so many players in this, like who could have done it.
And like if something like this were to happen now, nobody would be allowed around that area. All
No.
that would be taped off. They would be collecting the dirt. They would be taking samples and seeing if there was accelerants and
They would have
question.
multiple suspects at that
Right.
point.
Yes, but see, and I did forget to mention that George never made formal reports about these threats. he just kind of brushed them off, and again, 1948, it's like people just said stuff. You just went about your business.
Right. So it was all hearsay when there's no paper trail.
Right.
Dang.
Hmm.
Wow. I mean, what a case to cover.
Yeah, all in Christmas. So they're dealing with this. That's kind of the kicker too, is this happens on Christmas Eve. And so the following days are the days, of Christmas, and where your family
Mm-hmm.
is joyful and be together and be, happy and thankful and celebrating.
And living with that nightmare every Christmas for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
Awful.
awful, horrible.
Awful. Thank you so much for covering that. I did not know that story.
I didn't either until I Googled Christmas stuff too, because like I said, I didn't know if you'd had anything, and I was like, oh,
No, you were on it. You were on it. And when I was looking up stuff, that was one of the top cases to cover. And I was like, good. Heather's on it. She's
right.
got this one.
Yes, unsolved mystery.
Well, I
It's
appreciate your help
no
and you
problem.
giving the story. What were
It's
you going to say?
I said thanks for having me again. I
Oh,
love it.
yeah. Yeah, she'll be back. I mean, you've been such a blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And I will have another, I mean, I don't want to say like Christmas murder, but you know what I mean? Like another tragedy around the holidays coming up on the on next time for the next episode. But we appreciate you listening. And if anyone is from that area and you remember seeing the sign or you heard anything about it, because obviously that sign was up for decades, so I'm sure people listening have probably have
I've
seen it or know about it,
I've heard the rumors.
heard the rumors. I would love to hear the rumors.
Mm,
Message me or put it in the comments on the episode on our Facebook page so people can see it. I'm just curious on everyone's thoughts and takes and theories and all that good stuff on it. If you can't get enough Operation Evil, consider supporting the podcast by joining Patreon or Operation Evil Plus on Buzzsprout. When you join, not only will you have access to exclusive bonus episodes, but you will also get a shout out from me. We currently have over 40 exclusive bonus episodes ready for you to binge on. The links to join can always be found in the show notes. If you can't join our Patreon or Operation Evil Plus on Buzzsprout, consider supporting us for free by rating the show, telling a friend about the podcast, or like and share our Facebook page. We appreciate every one of you and every time you listen. We'll be back next time with a new episode. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.